Hello, some thoughts for today. This talk is about the three jewels. Not the three jewels, actually, just three jewels. Buddhism has the three jewels. So, this is similar, and it's based on Buddhism to some degree. The three jewels: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha as the awakened being, Dharma, the teachings, and the Sangha, the community of just the community. So I heard a talk recently about the senses, human animal senses, how many of them have senses we don't have, and even if we have the same senses, there's a vast difference in range of sensation. Say, like dogs have an amazing sense of smell compared to us. I just heard of 100,000 times as great. Whether that's true, but it could be. And birds, their ability to see colors is much greater than ours. And some animals can sense electricity. It could be their main sense, electric fields. So there's a wide range of senses. And as they say, the world is as you see it. So, worlds change. Even two different people's worlds can be very different. There's one sense he touched on briefly, but it's an important sense that human beings have that perhaps most animals don't have. That's thinking mind. And you may think it's strange to think of the thinking mind as a sense, but it is a sense. In Buddhism, it's a sense. It perceives thoughts, and it's our way of perceiving the world and looking into the world. So this is the sense that makes human beings unique, at least in our experience. The thinking mind is a sense. Well, the Buddha looked at that, 2,500 years ago, around 500 BC. He wanted to get to the bottom of things, like what is the world? Who are we as perceivers? What is underneath everything? Perhaps he had the idea of enlightenment. Perhaps he'd heard of people that had done something similar. And he was driven to experience for himself the fundamental nature of his own mind, the universe. I mean, we can have those questions too, such as, like the movie The Matrix. How do we know we're not, just a mind sitting in a tank somewhere? How do we know that this world that we perceive exists? Because, a dog would be here and he'd perceive a different world. A bird, or one of those beat animals that just perceive electric fields. And each of us, two people sitting in the same room, would experience their worlds differently, depending on their nature. So what is the truth of this world? Where does it come from? What is it? Who are we as human beings? What is consciousness? What is the mind? And are we eternal or transitory? Do we reach a point where our body stops functioning, and we're buried beneath the ground? Or when we're born, when did we become a human being? Were we a human being a lot longer before we were born? Eternally? But anyway, there's these questions we have, and people make up ideas. The Buddha wanted to have a direct experience, so he studied with a lot of teachers, and he studied, but nobody seemed to have an answer that he wanted. So he tried a lot of practices, and he perhaps didn't seem to be getting too far. But finally, he seemed to hit on the right way to do it. And one morning, as he was sitting or meditating, he happened to notice the morning star, probably Venus, and at that moment, the realization came to him. Enlightenment came to him. So this experience, he later taught, to his fellow seekers. And this teaching expanded. He taught for, I don't know how many, 40 years at least, expanding groups of people. And this teaching eventually spread throughout Asia, into Tibet, China, Southeast Asia, even made its way into probably Western Asia, into Europe, through trading, and it's still widely taught. His awakening had a profound effect, I'd say, on the history of humanity, the explorations of humanity. A lot of people talk about his experience, and a lot of people may try to experience it themselves, which really is, I would say, the purpose of Buddhism. Not everyone experiences it. Probably the majority of people just talk about it. And what was his experience? I would say, one could say, if we have 5 senses and we count the 6th sense as the thinking mind, these 6 senses through which we perceive the world and constitute our reality. Is there anything beyond that? Like a perceiver, who's perceiving through these senses? That's what the Buddha wanted to know. And he reached a point where There's a shift in his consciousness. It said that all his senses dissolved into the essence of consciousness, even the thinking mind. What did he call this ground of consciousness? He called it supreme emptiness. You might say the primal void. He called it shunyata, which is translated as emptiness. That's not to say that the senses disappeared, but they dissolved into their source. Perception still existed, in a sense, but the senses having dissolved into the source, even the thinking mind dissolved into that source. And he noticed that the thinking mind returned to the source. The idea of individual self also disappeared, because the idea of the ego, the individual self, is a creation of the mind, thinking mind. It's a reference point, or as it thinks of the world. And it was called I call it the seventh level of the mind. And there's what we would call the eighth level, that Buddhists call the eighth level, treasure store. This retains all of experience, through lifetimes or this lifetime, from this point of perception. The whole universe, really, our own universe. And that's also based on the thinking mind. And that also disappears. Not disappears, but returns to the ground of existence, shunyata. So, what was this ground of being he called shunyata? Well, he did say anything beyond his own enlightenment would only be a dream. So he left it there. So the first jewel, the awakened mind, which the ultimate ground of being, the void from which all things arise, beyond which there is nothing. So the Buddha clarified this, as I said, and his teachings spread throughout the Eastern world, and it's still present. A great moment in human history, a great jewel, a moment of awakening. We're still, the West is a little behind, perhaps. Struggling ideas of what is consciousness, what is awareness. And now we're looking at artificial intelligence. Some people are saying, oh wow, it's going to become conscious. In a way, it's an extension of our sense of thinking mind. As Marshall McLuhan said, our tools are extensions of our own body, of our functions. So we have the computer, it's an extension of our thinking mind. A What does that mean? How do, how do we understand all this? How do we understand consciousness, thought, what a human being is, and what the universe is? So that the Buddha was a great moment of enlightening for humanity. But as human beings, we always want to go further. We want more. So as the Buddha's understanding spread throughout the East, there are many people that studied it, practiced it, absorb it into their own teachings and understanding. And maybe one wanted to know more about this ground of being, the shunyata, you might say, this emptiness. And in India, they're very centered on these things. They put a huge amount of their culture into exploring these kind of things. And they explored a lot and learned a lot. So I feel like around 900 AD, I believe, a little over 1,000 years after the Buddha, a lot of this understanding was clarified in the school of Kashmir Shaivism. They put together and experienced. So what is this shunyata? So they, in their meditation, as they entered the void, you might say, of shunyata, and began to explore, and as they noticed, they paid close attention, and they were coming out of meditation, out of the void, and as the world begins coming into existence, you might say, they noticed the process. So in this endless void, they notice there's for some reason a ripple. There's a ripple, a spanda, in this void. And with this ripple comes some movement of consciousness, of whatever it is. And with this movement, the void becomes aware of itself. So time starts, existence starts. And they looked at this, the quality of existence at this most initial primal level. They noticed two qualities, and they called it Chit and Ananda, which we translate as consciousness and bliss. It's usually translated as that. And it's really called Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means the eternal, always true. It means true, always true in a situation. So it's, you might say, the perfect truth, the ultimate truth. And that's the qualities of this Chit and this Ananda, the most perfect quality. I might translate Chit, it's translated consciousness, but I don't know if you really know what consciousness is. It's a word, and I think we know what it is because we can use the word, like artificial intelligence could use the word, and like our mind can use the word, but do we know what it is? So maybe we could translate it as intelligence. I like to call it clarity. It's not like infinite intelligence, infinite consciousness. That's a little bit out of our experience. But clarity is something maybe we can relate to. And perfect clarity, it's something we could relate to better. And Ananda, translated as bliss. We could call it joy, freedom, well-being, love, the qualities. I like to call it, translated as perfect love. Perfect, but it could be infinite or not, depending on the situation. So that's, you might say, the nature of our true self, if we could call it the true self, our non-physical source, perfect clarity, perfect love. And as those teachings, understanding, well, over time, they developed. That's Kashmir Shaivism, and this teaching I would call the second jewel. As human beings, we, going further, we ask, okay, so if this is our true nature, the source of who we are, perfect clarity, perfect love, why don't we experience that? Why isn't that our experience of existence? Even seems like even great masters, they have troubles, perhaps confusion. So how do we bring this understanding of our true self, our non-physical self, our truth of our being, how do we bring that, integrate that into this physical world, which dominates our experience for most of us? We suffer. That was really I'd say, major goal of the Buddha. How do I put an end to suffering? So he thought he had it, but there still seemed to be a lot of suffering. People thought, well, let me understand this better. And understanding became much clearer of the nature of who we are and what we are. But how do we live it? That's another. We've struggled with that for over another 1,000 years. And so I feel there's a third jewel. How to do that? How do we live in the experience of clarity and love as the primary experience of our life? And I feel Abraham Hicks has clarified that, brought it together in a simple, clear manner. Abraham says that, we have two parts, our non-physical and our physical. And our non-physical is, you could say, perfect clarity, perfect love. But how does that relate to our physical experience? We feel a lot of distress at times. And one of the great insights there is that our well-being, our happiness, which we usually think of as based on the experiences of our life, is really not based on the experience of our life. It's based on the relationship of the two parts of us. When our physical mind is in harmony with our non-physical, we feel positive emotions. When it's out of harmony, we feel negative emotions. And it's not due to the situations in our life, which is a somewhat radical insight, brilliant insight. So really, we can tell the relationship of the two by how we feel, which is brilliant. But then in the practical sense, it's also brilliant in the sense it's like you can monitor that. You can monitor that relationship. When we're feeling good, we can say, oh, okay, what I'm thinking and focusing on is in harmony with how my non-physical self sees it, you might say. And when I'm feeling distressed or negative feelings of some type, it's because what I'm thinking and focusing on isn't really the way my non-physical self sees it. So we can use that in a practical manner. It's like the game of hot and cold. How do I know what my non-physical self is? That like infinite intelligence, perfect clarity, love, joy, freedom, happiness. How do I align with that? If I notice what I'm feeling. So I notice what I'm feeling, and then if I'm feeling good, I can keep going that direction. If I'm feeling distressed, negative, I need to make a shift, a little top. So if I get closer to it, you might say it says getting warmer. I get further away, getting colder as my feelings change. So we have a perfect, I don't know if you call it GPS or monitor. It tells us which direction we're going, a compass. Tell it I'm going in the right direction. And so over time, this perfect clarity and perfect love, happiness can become the dominant experience in our life. And there's another aspect of it too, that as we live in harmony with this, our higher self, which is pure love, intelligence, it knows who we are and what we want, and it's attracting all of that to us in a sense, or it's guiding us there to where we want to go. So you could say there's the law of attraction working as a fundamental law of the universe. Whatever I vibrate to becomes my experience, and I can change as I change my vibration. My experiences changes as I line up with clarity and love. That's what I experience in my life, and the actual creation of my life, point of creation of my life, was created through that. There's a moment of creation where we create our life. So you might say that's a third jewel that we have clarified in this present moment. present time. Another great gift. You know, the Buddha called Sangha. What is Sangha? It's our life, really. The people in our life. The experience of our life. So we have the knowledge and the freedom and the ability to choose our life and what we create. So we're very blessed due to all the work of all those that have come before us. And we're at a wonderful, beautiful, amazing point. Who knows where we'll be in another 1,000 years. And we're creating that, moving ahead. So let's walk in harmony with our true self and express it and live it. Thank you very much. God bless you.